I'm Alex Michelson. This week, the issue is a brand new presidential race. California's own Kamala Harris taking over the Democratic ticket to face off against Donald Trump. Here with insights and analysis, Melanie Mason of Politico and UCLA's Lynn Vavreck. Then, Areva Martin on her decades-long friendship with Kamala Harris, including the side the public doesn't get to see very often. The Issue Is starts right now.
Broadcasting across California, you're watching The Issue Is.
Predators who abused women. Fraudsters who ripped off consumers. Cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
That is Vice President Kamala Harris on how her time as California's Attorney General and as a courtroom prosecutor prepared her to run against Donald Trump. In a matter of hours, really, Harris became the presumptive Democratic nominee this week. I'm Alex Michelson. Welcome to The Issue Is. This is one of those weeks that will be studied by historians for many years to come. And because of that, we brought in the big guns to help us break it down, because I need some help processing what we all went through. So joining us now is Melanie Mason, who is a senior political writer for Politico. Her newest article at Politico.com is called How California Democrats Learn to Stop Worrying and Love Kamala Harris. Lynn Vavreck teaches politics at UCLA as contributor to the New York Times. Her latest book is called The Bitter End, the 2020 Presidential Campaign and the Challenge to American Democracy. Lynn, Melanie, welcome to you both. What a week. What a week. So last week, Melanie, we've got some video of this. You and I were at the Republican National Convention. We were up there. There was so much energy. The big story was the Republicans were all united. The Democrats were in disarray. Everybody there was 1,000% confident that there's no way that Donald Trump can lose this thing. And then what a week we've seen. So much has changed. Can you walk us through the inside of how Kamala Harris did this, how she consolidated the party so quickly, what we know about what happened?
Well, I think it's first important to recognize that the first big thing was that President Biden puts out his letter saying that he's not going to run again, and within less than an hour puts out a second tweet that says, by the way, I'm endorsing my Vice President Kamala Harris. And that was the signal, I think, to everybody in the party that the consolidation time was on. But she was not an inactive player in all of this, right? As we know, she was working the phones, making more than 100 calls that Sunday to check in with folks, including people who I think were seen as potential rivals for this. And sure enough, what we saw were people like Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer or California Governor Gavin Newsom, all of them one by one taking themselves out of contention. And so by the time we got to Monday, where we got to the moment where there was state party delegates getting together to say that they were getting behind Kamala Harris, it was unanimous. I mean, I think that real show of consolidation, of unanimity, is pretty striking.
And that was not something that was necessarily assumed. Certainly when we were talking at the RNC, there was talked about maybe an open convention, and that stopped really quick. And can you talk about this as somebody who studies politics, the political science of this from a historic moment?
Yeah, it's unprecedented, as everyone has been saying. And really, it's the last 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks. It's just been a really unusual time. And then to change the candidate so late in the process, it really is unique. But it's also a unique political time. And so people know pretty much which party they're interested in. The parties want to build different worlds. Voters know that. So this kind of switch may have less of an impact on the final vote than it maybe would have if it was the early 2000s or the 1990s. But it's still so unusual to have this happen.
Well, and let's talk about where Donald Trump goes from here, because the playbook at the RNC was very clear. Joe Biden, weak and old. Donald Trump, tough and strong. Now where does he go? So here's how he was describing Kamala Harris this week on the campaign trail.
For 3.5 years, Lion Kamala Harris has been the ultra-liberal driving force behind every single Biden catastrophe. She is a radical left lunatic who will destroy our country. If she ever gets the chance to get into office, we're not going to let that happen.
Donald Trump, not exactly subtle, which has never really been his thing. Melanie, where do the Republicans go from here, and what have they been saying to you privately?
I've been surprised this week that they haven't had a stronger, more cohesive message against the vice president, because you would think that she would have been the obvious person to follow in Biden's footsteps if he stepped down. And the fact is, it felt like for the last couple of days they were sort of casting about. I mean, I think there are a couple of themes we're going to be hearing. The border czar conversation, right, about immigration. They saw immigration as a weak point for President Biden, and they're absolutely going to continue that with Harris. I think the question about trying to go after her prosecutorial record, though, has confused them a little bit, because I've seen them, in some ways, mimic the conversation that happened in the 2020 Democratic primary, criticizing her from the left. But they're supposed to be the tough-on-crime party. So, to me, I've been struck by the confusion and just sort of the lack of cohesion in a message. That's not going to last for very long, though.
Lynn, you sort of get into the demographics of where we're at. Who is the swing voter? And who are we talking about here? What should we be focused in on?
So there are a set of people. That set is smaller than it's been 20 years ago. It's shrunk every election since 2016. But there are a set of people who are not yet sure how they will vote in November. They tend to be less interested in politics generally. Maybe politics is not a hobby for them. They don't follow it as closely as some people. So they will make up their decisions quite late.
So how does Harris being in there impact them versus Biden?
I think one of the ways that this is good for the Democrats in terms of these swing voters is this massive enthusiasm that has been generated by announcing her as the presumptive nominee. And just the way it's taken the wind out of the Republican sail after the convention. It was all about the RNC. And then all of a sudden, it was nothing about the RNC. And so the momentum is moving in her direction. She's going to roll that right into the convention. There's always a convention bounce. She'll get that. And then it's not that long until early voting.
Well, we know one thing, though, that you love Beyonce, right?
Yes, this is
this
true.
week, Beyonce was back in the news because she allowed Kamala Harris to use her song Freedom in her first ad, and also is going to probably be her new walk-up song is going to be Freedom. We'll see if Beyonce performs at the DNC. That would be amazing if she did. So we go to break. We're going to be back to talk more about this race when we come back, but we go to break with Beyonce's song Freedom, just for Melanie.
It's a great song.
And it's a good message, too, right?
Plus, like,
forward-looking.
slightly leaning into the Kendrick Lamar, Drake. Kendrick's on this song. I think there's some subtle messages going on here.
Very nice. Back with our panel, UCLA's Lynn Vavreck and Politico's Melanie Mason. And we're getting some poll results now about J.D. Vance, his choice. Harry Enton on CNN brought the numbers this way.
It's in negative net territory. Look at that, -6 points. I will tell you, Aaron, I have gone all the way back since 1980. He is the first guy after immediately following a convention, a VP pick, who actually had a net negative favorable rating. That is underwater. The average since 2000 is plus 19 points. J.D. Vance making history in the completely wrong way.
Now, we know for context that we're way more partisan than we were before, which would lead to net negative ratings for some of the other candidates, too. So all that said, is there some regret on the Republican side about this J.D. Vance pick? Because the Vance pick was made at a time of extreme confidence for the Trump campaign.
I think that we are hearing some of that, because you're right. It was like the Vance pick happened in a different universe. I mean, the Trump campaign saw they were on a way to a blowout. And so the Vance pick was a way to reinforce the brand, the Trump brand, the MAGA brand. It was not necessarily like picking a Nikki Haley, for example, or a Tim Scott, where it was maybe reaching out to some Trump skeptical voters. This was really about the base and the hardcore. And so what we've seen is now that we are back to an extremely close election, a place where they are going to be fighting for the smallest margins, J.D. Vance he's an extremely online Republican character, which means that he has a lot of comments to find in that sort of caustic internet tone that is not playing well when you're running as a vice presidential nominee. And so we've seen for this whole week, they've had to clean up on certain comments that may have been really funny in the Twitterverse, but they don't play when you're trying to reach out for swing voters.
Does this matter?
Well, speaking as a childless cat lady, I will just say that, yeah, I think those things, they go to judgment. And for some voters who are already voting for Trump, for the Republicans, those voters are going to say, like, he should speak his mind, and that's what we love about him. Okay. For Democrats, they're going to say, that's ridiculous, how offensive. But again, we're talking about that set of people in the middle. And yeah, I think for some of those voters, that's going to be a moment about judgment.
Yeah, and just for context, people didn't see that comment that we're talking about. This was years ago. He basically was saying that the Democrats have too many leaders who don't have kids, and that's bad for their judgment. And he made fun of them, saying that they were childless cat ladies. All right, VP picks on the Democratic side and put up some of those names that are being discussed right now. Here are some of them. Josh Shapiro, who's the governor of Pennsylvania, Mark Kelly, the senator from Arizona, Roy Cooper, the governor from North Carolina, Pete Buttigieg, the secretary of transportation. Melanie, let's go through them really quick and sort of give us the top line on each of them. Let's start with Mark Kelly, the astronaut.
Well, you just said it. Mark Kelly, the astronaut. I mean, that's going to be a tagline. And senator from a border state, senator from Arizona. So if Democrats are looking at a path to victory through the Sun Belt, through states like Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia, I think that they see somebody like a Mark Kelly as an asset.
And he's married to Gabby Giffords, who, of course, was shot. He helped nurse her back to health, and so gun violence is an important issue for him.
Absolutely.
Also seen as more of a moderate in terms of the senator. Josh Shapiro, relatively new to the political stage, the governor of Pennsylvania.
That's right, and it reinforces the narrative of a fresh new generation, fresh faces, turning the page. Shapiro's also known as somebody who is a moderate. He was the highest vote getter in Pennsylvania gubernatorial history. It's clearly somebody who has a ton of popularity in a key swing state. That's the blue wall strategy that Democrats want. So if you're looking at different paths, Shapiro, there's a really strong case to be made
Hard
there.
to see how Democrats win the presidency without winning Pennsylvania. Pete Buttigieg, the secretary of transportation. Was
Harris's opponent in the 2019-2020 primary, but so they know each other very well. And look, I think that the transportation secretary is probably one of the best messengers and communicators that the Democratic Party has. We've seen him on cable news, and I think that if Democrats want somebody who can really sell that case, Buttigieg probably does it better than anybody else.
Who do you think, Lynn, is the strongest pick?
I think that if I were picking, I would also pick Secretary Buttigieg. They're all very talented, but the electoral, it's easy to sit and say, oh, this person's going to deliver this state and that state. And I want to say, like, set that all aside. Again, you know, we're talking about a handful of votes in a handful of states. Josh Shapiro can work Pennsylvania from the governor's mansion. But I like the idea of the ticket being very future-oriented and a Vice President Harris, Secretary Buttigieg ticket. Man, that is the future. And it's a little bit like Clinton Gore. We're getting on the bus together, and we're going to go drive across the country. And they could do something like that, the 100-day race to the election.
And for folks who say having a black woman and a gay man is too much change at one time.
I think that I'm not worried about that. Again, I think for the handful of swing voters that we're talking about, the people for whom that is a deal breaker, they've already sorted. And so remember, the swing voters, they're less interested in politics. They don't think about this all the time. They want problem solvers. They want common sense. They want to turn the page on the last 8 years. And I think that Harris, Buttigieg, that turns the page.
Who's the favorite right now?
I think that all the names that came up, I mean, I do think we should also mention, we had him on the screen, but Roy Cooper from North Carolina, because he actually has a pre-existing friendship relationship with Harris dating back to their days of Attorney General. But no political journalist looks good making predictions, so I'm not going to do it.
That's smart. We're going to go to break with some music. This is brand new because I think we're feeling brand new about this race, which seemed over last week, and now we got a whole new race. Areva Martin is up next to talk about her decades-long relationship with Kamala Harris. But Melanie, Lynn, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks.
Right back. More of The Issue Is after this.
What Harris did last night, her campaign and her performance on that debate stage showed that she is one of the candidates and one of the top candidates that can, you know, stand toe-to-toe with Trump and can beat Trump. And that's always, I think, been a question about her candidacy.
And I think a lot of people thought watching that they could visualize her now on a stage with President Trump.
That was Areva Martin on our show 5 years ago, talking about Kamala Harris on the Democratic primary stage. now in 2024, she may finally get the chance to debate Trump. Maybe. Who knows? Areva Martin, great to see you. Welcome back to The Issue Is.
It is so amazing. First of all, I didn't know you were going to show that clip. Same hairstyle. You and I look exactly the same age.
Well, you look great.
Well, thank you. But we both look the same age. And how ironic is that I'm talking about her standing toe-to-toe with Donald Trump on the debate stage, and right now in the news, the big issue is Trump trying to weasel out of the ABC debate that's scheduled for September 10th?
Well, I guess let's just start there, since you brought it up. What do you make of that? Trump saying, I'm not going to confirm a debate until I know who the nominee is. She's not officially the nominee yet.
I'm not surprised by it. Look, Trump and team have spent the last 2.5 years planning their whole campaign around Trump being the younger of the two older guys, and he being the stronger, more virile candidate, and Joe Biden being the frail, fragile candidate. And now in comes Kamala Harris, the beautiful, the smart, the young, the strong, the debater, the prosecutor. And so, of course he's nervous, of course he's afraid, and of course he's going to do everything in his power to weasel out of that debate. I predicted it a couple of days ago. I'm not surprised by it. And I don't think he's going to debate her.
You don't, at the end of the day?
Maybe he does, but he's going to put so many contingencies, so many, requirements in place that maybe it never, ever happens because he's afraid of her. The convict and the prosecutor. Can you imagine what that's going to look like?
He's won a lot of debates, though, in the past. He loves being on TV, is very comfortable being on TV, and very confident in himself. And maybe it ends up happening. We'll see.
He's met his match.
Okay, of course. You're a little biased, and that's what we're here to talk about. You've known Kamala Harris for a long time, going back to your college days.
Yes.
And a lot's been made about Kamala Harris, the politician. Can you talk to us about Kamala Harris, the person, and your guys' relationship?
Yeah, and I always like to say this because people will then say, well, Areva, I didn't know you went to Howard. I did not go to Howard University. She was at Howard University. I was at the University of Chicago, but we met when we both were young college students. And what I know about Kamala, which is what we're seeing today, is that she said it at Essence Fest. She eats no for breakfast. And, that was a cute phrase, but it's a powerful phrase if you know her. And just think about how full circle this whole moment is. Here is someone who ran for president, who, by all accounts, didn't do very well in that 2020 presidential campaign. Many people wrote her off. I can remember after that going to events for her where literally they were having to call on the phone to crowd build. And now to see this groundswell of support, to see the millions of people across this country supporting her, I think is a testament to her fortitude. She didn't give up. She didn't get discouraged. She didn't run and hide. She stood strong, and she proved to the nation that she was up for the challenge. And that's what I know about her.
I mean, talk to us about the young Kamala Harris, what she was like.
Very stylish. We had that in common. Always a go-getter. Very ambitious, but a kind person. You hear her tell the story of why she became a prosecutor. She did that because a high school friend of hers, I didn't know her in high school, but a high school friend of hers was being molested by a family member. And she asked her mom, could that friend come live with her? And that inspired her. And that's what I know about her from the young Kamala Harris. Always joyous. So what Republicans are trying to make hay of in terms of her smiling and laughing, that's been her. She's always just been an upbeat, happy, joyous person.
Obviously, you've been talking about her on this show since we started this show. What did it mean to you this week to not only see her become the nominee, but become the nominee in like 2 or 3 hours?
I can't tell you. I was in New York. I was about to take the stage to do a speaking event, and everyone's phones started blowing up, getting pinged. What I was so surprised by was how quickly Biden issued his full-throated endorsement, and then how quickly all the other endorsements started to roll in. That was shocking. Particularly, again, I go back to 2020. We know what 2020 was like. So when I see that $250 million raised so quickly, and I'm thinking back to when we were like on the phones begging people to donate to that campaign, I'm going, yes, we did it.
What did it mean to you personally, Areva, as Kamala's friend?
It meant to me that someone that I have known for a long time, that I love like a sister, achieved her ultimate dream. And it's not just about her. And I think that's the thing that makes me and millions of other people excited about her candidacy is that she's going to work to put people who haven't been seen and haven't been heard first. The whole issue of Black maternal health, can you imagine that being an issue for any other president? We have not seen that issue elevated in the way that she's elevated it. $16 billion that the Biden-Harris administration pledged to HBCU colleges and universities, because she is in that White House. So many issues that I care about, that so many people that look like me care about. I know we are in great hands.
You are headed to the DNC
Yes.
in Chicago, and
Yes.
hopefully we'll talk with you there, which will be quite a moment for you and
California
quite a moment
delegate
for
at
California.
large, very proud Kamala Harris delegate.
All right. Surprisingly that you're voting for her after this conversation here tonight. Areva, always great to see you. Thank you so much. And you know we like to end with music. So we went to Kamala Harris's Spotify playlist to try to pick a music. And so do you have any idea what her favorite song is?
Oh, right now it's probably Freedom.
Well, it's Freedom. We already played that in the show. So now we're going to one of her old school favorites. That's A Tribe Called Quest and their song Check the Rhine.
Yes.
So that is what we're listening to as we go to break. Areva, thanks so much.
Love it, love it, love it.
We end this week, though, with a note about the Olympic Games. They're happening in Paris this weekend, but 4 years from now, they're happening right here in Los Angeles. And this week, a delegation of California officials are joining First Lady Jill Biden at the opening ceremonies to cheer on the U.S. team and meet with Parisian leaders to learn lessons for LA 2028. Among those, U.S. Senator Alex Padilla and LA Mayor Karen Bass. California, by the way, has more athletes competing in these games than any other state in the union. And historically, while we're talking, athletes from USC have won more gold medals than any other university in the country. Had to get that in. We are so proud of all of the athletes and hope these games can bring our country together at a time when we desperately need it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week, and go USA.